Welcome to the WTS webinar, Is Your iSeries Recoverable? Today's webinar will cover topics related to iSeries disaster recovery, including planning, staffing, and best practices for IBM's AS400 solutions. My name is Ward Quarles. I am Director of Marketing and Communications for WTS. We appreciate the time you're devoting to today's webinar and we'll use it wisely. Let's get started. What is a disaster? Anything that stops your business from functioning and that cannot be corrected within an acceptable amount of time. For those that live in the Gulf States area, a hurricane could be a disaster. If you live in other parts of the U.S., a tornado, a severe storm, or an earthquake could constitute a disaster. For all of us, some sort of systems failure is a disaster scenario. According to WTS, anything unexpected that restricts your access to the iSeries is a disaster. Natural or regional, extended power outages, operator error, hardware or disk failure, malicious attack from either inside or outside the organization, or planned maintenance gone wrong. For all of these scenarios, only you can decide what constitutes a disaster for your organization. Is your iSeries recoverable? Are you tasked with developing the recovery plan for your organization? Will your recovery plan include documented recovery procedures? Can you guarantee the availability of your internal staff during a disaster? And what facilities and equipment will be used for the recovery in the event of a disaster? Hopefully you'll be able to answer these questions by the end of this webinar. Customer profile. 12% don't have a recovery solution or plan in place. 24% have a third-party warm site solution, but have never completed a successful test at that location. 25% have an in-house, same site or alternate site recovery solution. A poor availability solution always guarantees loss of data, disruption to your business, internal conflict during the disaster, and potentially lost customers. How prepared are we for a disaster for our organizations? We'll start with backups. Does backup equal recovery? Most of us do backups each night on our systems. For companies doing data backups, 42% are often incomplete. They don't contain everything that's necessary to recover the business and have it back up and operating. 21% of those running iSeries are unrecoverable, and 36% of the Intel solutions are unrecoverable. You don't want to be like this CIO. Don't want to be in the position of having to explain to the organization why you couldn't recover critical business systems, applications, and data in the event of a disaster. What are the market requirements for disaster recovery? Common disaster recovery exposures include no documented DR plan, no recovery facility, local tape storage, equipment constraints, human resource limitations, lack of enterprise application expertise, loss of data where the recovery point is greater than 12 hours, lengthy recovery where the recovery time is greater than 1 week, or no recent test to validate that the organization actually has a valid recovery plan. In the iSeries community, our customers state that their requirements include a reduction in the risk and exposure in the event of a disaster. They're looking for a proven and reliable disaster recovery solution that meets their corporate disaster recovery objectives while staying within their budgetary constraints. They want their solution to scale to meet future needs, and they want assurances on recovery time and recovery point objectives. They're looking for their provider to have a successful documented testing plan, and they want that to be in a geographically diverse region for their disaster recovery scenario. Here's what the business continuity market looks like in terms of a chart. On the lower left-hand side of the chart is your tape backup process. That tape backup process probably offers a recovery point objective between 12 and 24 hours, recovery point objective measuring data loss, and a recovery time objective measured in days or weeks. This is how quickly you can get the systems back up and running. Third-party providers reduce your recovery point objective and your recovery time objective. but not to the point where it's measured in hours or minutes. You have to move all the way up to the upper right-hand portion of this chart to measure minutes or hours in terms of recovery, and that deals with high availability or replication or enterprise clustering. Remember, the further up on the right the chart you go, the more it costs in terms of budgeting for your recovery solution. A managed recovery solution from WTS is geared towards improving your recovery point and recovery time objectives to be measured in something less than 12 hours for RPO and less than 48 hours in terms of RTO, but priced to compete with those solutions that you find in the lower left-hand quadrant of this chart. Let's talk about the managed recovery solution from WTS. WTS will perform as a part of our managed service a backup and recovery assessment. We'll perform a full recovery of your solution in our data centers, and we'll provide the disaster recovery documentation from that test. We'll stage equipment that matches your production configuration, and we'll conduct with you the first year 2 full recovery tests. Each year after that, we'll do 1 recovery test with your organization. In the event of a disaster, we will actually perform the recovery for you. You are not required to send your people to our sites to do that recovery. We'll establish network connectivity for your staff to access those systems within our data centers, and we'll work with your internal and external auditors to make sure we're meeting their compliance objectives. Let's take each of these steps now individually and look at the details that support them. The backup and recovery assessment stage, we'll come in and examine your strategy and policy for data, as well as your strategy and policy for server infrastructure. We'll develop with your organization a critical server checklist to make sure that we're recovering the right systems in the right order. And we'll look at your data exposure models for your current backup policies. We'll review the tape management policies as well as your offsite storage strategies. And we'll identify for your organization the unique scenarios and exposures that could constitute a disaster. We'll begin to model recovery point and recovery time objectives for your organization, and we'll build that disaster recovery plan based on all of these factors. The initial recovery test, we'll come in and we'll stage equipment that meets your production configuration requirements. We'll conduct a complete restore of your iSeries and Intel equipment. We'll restore all of your critical business applications, and we'll test that with your team. We'll give your team network connectivity to our servers to perform a test of that DR solution. We'll again modify the documentation that we're creating for your disaster recovery plan, and we'll begin to measure that timeline for RTO and RPO. Each year after the first year, we're going to do that annual test. This is included in your fees. There are no additional fees to perform a disaster recovery test at our organization's data centers. We'll provide the internet access, and we'll provide access to those solutions for your team to validate. Each of these steps will again update the disaster recovery plan that we've created for your individual organization. Here's a comparison of third-party provider solutions to that of WTS. We'll come in and do that tape assessment for you, making sure that what's on your backup media meets the recovery guidelines of your organization. We'll actually do a recovery test with your team, and we'll do that 2 times the first year and once each year subsequently. There's no hours allocated to the test with WTS. We're going to guarantee the success of your test as a part of that process. You can notice as you go through this chart the differences between WTS and other third-party providers. We're going to guarantee your facilities and equipment availability within 2 hours of a disaster declaration, and we're actually going to perform that recovery for your team. There is no reason for your staff to travel to our site in the event of a disaster. If you needed long-term support, WTS does have hosting solutions available beyond the actual disaster need. Why WTS? We're going to guarantee your recovery. We're going to validate your backup processes. We're going to create the documentation that you need to show that you have a successfully documented recovery plan. And we're going to test that with you at least once a year. We have over 20 years of IBM infrastructure and management experience behind us to guarantee your success. We're going to test and prove that we can meet your RTO and RPO objectives, and there's no dependency on your people to travel to our site. We'll know your systems, we'll know your processes for doing a recovery so that we can guarantee that as a part of our service. We also have value-added services if you need them. Remember the chart for business continuity? High availability was in the upper right-hand quadrant. We can provide that for your iSeries and X-Series equipment. We can also do data replication from your location to ours. We use Vision products, specifically Mimics for the iSeries and Double Take for the Intel equipment. We also can do data vaulting. If you want to eliminate the nightly backups and the offsite tape storage, data vaulting using an EMC solution from WTS is a very real opportunity for your business. We also look to drive down the cost of our solution through virtualization strategies within the equipment. Who is WTS? Maybe you've not known us prior to this webinar. Let's start with our management team. Richard Dulesky is our Chief Technology Officer and Vice President of Business Continuity Solutions. He's a certified systems integration specialist and a certified disaster recovery planner. Frequent presenter with IBM and Common. You may have seen him at one of those events. His newest book, titled Systemized Disaster Recovery Planning, is available from MC Press and Amazon.com. Our staff is knowledgeable on iSeries and X-Series equipment. We've supported 18 computer room disasters, and we're doing over 200 disaster recovery tests each year. We're performing 2 tests a week on average. The data center is staffed 24/7. Our processes are SAS 70 Type 2 compliant for those that have Sarbanes-Oxley or other compliance requirements. In conclusion, your goal is not just the continuation of your business operations. It's not enough just to arrange for hardware with third-party providers. You really need a plan that addresses the staffing, equipment, and recovery skills necessary to guarantee your business is up and running after a disaster. The task at hand for you is to educate your management team on the vulnerabilities of your organization. What are the risks for data? What are the risks for equipment, and what disaster scenarios might you be exposed to? WTS can help you understand what those are, along with the associated cost of doing business with our organization. Work with us and we'll put together a disaster recovery option that you can compare to your current plans. Thank you for your participation today. My contact information is available. Feel free to reach out to me with additional questions that you may have.